Ready?
Yeah.
Hello and welcome back to All Things Real Time, where I'm joined as always by Lorimbo. How are you doing?
I'm doing absolutely dreadfully, as always.
As always.
It's
Glad to hear it.
every day is a shit day when you're Italian. Anyway, today I'm joined by Hart because I'm the host, and Hart is my second little host.
No,
I call
not
him
true.
little host because he's little in real life. Uh,
Yeah,
true,
okay.
so true. Anyway, this is gonna be a bit of a slower episode. We were taking it slow. We're gonna be talking about a bunch of interesting things. As always, we're gonna be talking about the most recent results, and I think we have a
The
couple of
results of what?
surprises for you guys.
Exam
Yeah,
results?
that's yeah. Then
Let's talk about EpicLAN results, because that's what we ended last episode with, so we can talk about it.
true, true.
Ema, my boy, has choked once again. When will he stop? When will he
Okay,
play ZVZ?
okay. Counterpoint. Okay, did he choke though? I didn't feel like he played that badly. I didn't feel like I didn't watch those games. I was like, wow, Iba is playing really under his performance. I thought Iba was not playing great, yeah, sure, but I thought Figaro was playing pretty well, and like the games were fine. No, do you
Eba
think he choked?
Eba was not thinking, and he did a few things that were just dumb. And I said, "Why did you do that?" And he said, "I don't know. I was tilted." One of the things is he got 12 pulled in one game, and he held it really badly, which is fine. That happens, and you just need to be better at holding 12 pull. That's fine. And then in the next game, he 12 pulls against a guy who always does the same opening. That's really safe against early plays.
Yeah,
And
that
I'm
that
and so I'm
why I
like,
completely agree.
yeah. So I go to him, why did you do that? Why did you pick that build then? What was the point? He says, I don't know. I'm just tilted. But then we're in this weird spot, right, where he's not thinking, he's not choosing builds, he's just, I don't know, tilt queuing, tilt picking what he's going to do the next game. And it doesn't really make any sense. And think little things like that, I think, let him down.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think he never thinks anyway. So I think that's absolutely. They wouldn't say it's a joke. I think that's absolutely what we expected from Iba to be a APM monkey instead of actually. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I don't think he performed under what he expected. That's about how I expected. Because I saw the lineup. I thought, okay, FIBA loses gonna probably be to Figaro Risky, and that's about what I
Yeah,
expected because
yeah,
those
for
two
sure.
are like the strongest players in the tournament right there. So it makes sense. I think it was fine. I
I
will
don't
say
think
the
it's,
finals were a bit disappointing though.
yeah. A bit of a, I mean, we had ZVZ finals before this, and that was AC Figaro. And those were really interesting games. Actually, really like decent. They were close enough that it was fun and interesting, and there was a really good range of strategies. The finals was just like roach timings versus roach timings. It just became roach wars over and over again. Like nobody was like, "Oh, I'm gonna make mutas this game." It was just roach spam. The whole time I'm just like trying to cast this complete, like it's so boring, and I just have and no one really wanted to watch it. I was like desperately being like, "Can you guys come to the like stage area so you can watch it?" So I'm not talking to myself. It's the worst, but it is
No,
what it
I
is.
thought I thought that just generally was not they were not good games. I'm like I wish we could have seen a bit of cooler strategies. Like AC was pretty good. Like AC Figaro was more interesting I think than Figaro. Um,
Risky.
Risky. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
about to say Joshua. But yeah,
You're allowed
sure.
to call him that because you're friends, yeah.
Yeah, because we are tight like that. I can call pro players by their first
Yeah.
name
You wouldn't say that
because we
to
are
Phil's
tight.
at LAN. He's fucking jacked, okay? No.
Yeah,
It
true.
was a really fun event. I don't know if I should tell this story actually, but I feel like I should. I haven't told you this yet. Eba is tilted, obviously, and we're talking with Zane. And Eba says, Zane, can I play a game on your PC? Because Eba's now packed his PC down, like getting ready to head home, which is fine. So Zane says, yeah, sure, you can play a game. Eba logs into his main, and it's at exactly 6001 MMR. And he's like, I don't want to play because the MMR is really nice. And Zane's like, you have to play. And he's like, oh, can I off race? And Zane's like, no, you're not allowed to off race anymore. You're only allowed to play on your main, and you're only allowed to play seriously, Zerg. Zane's like, okay, I'll be right back. I'm gonna get some water. So Iba's like, okay, log in on your account. We'll play one. So I really quickly log in my account, which is at like 5k. Start queuing. As soon as the queue pops, Zane comes back. and kicks Eva off the computer. He's like, get out of the way. I'm playing this one. And I'm like, what do you mean you're playing this one? It's my account. You're gonna run my MMR down. The queue finishes and the game loads, and it's Molten, who is like literally down the row from us, and he sees this loading screen. So he types, "Who is this?" Zane writes, "Heart." I look to my left, right, and Molten is just staring back at me. And he's like, he writes in the chat, it pops up on the screen, "I'm looking at you right now." Okay, so immediately we're off to a good start. This is Zane Zerg, which is not good, by the way. Zane is immediately 12 pooling, and then as soon as he makes the pool on 12 supply, he's like, "Okay, what do I do now? Do I make a worker?" I'm like, bro, this is my main. He's running my MMR down. He immediately, sends the drone to the natural. The probe is harassing it. He immediately misplaces the hatch. And Molten types, "XD, do you even play this game?" Hilarious.
Wait, okay. I have a question.
Okay,
Were you like ending? So like, was it clear that it was not actually you playing, or was Morten actually under the
I'm
impression
stood
that it
up
was you?
behind Zane. He's literally can see me, like, stood up looking at him. He knows it's not me, right? He knows. So he says, "Do you even play this game?" Immediately loses the probe to two lings. To the lings in the drone.
Classic.
Zane instantly pulls all of the workers, cancels the hatch. It's a fake hatch. It was a fake hatch the whole time. Gets through the wall, starts drone drilling. Some of the cleanest drone drills I've ever seen, by the way. That man's drone micro is insane and wins. I don't know how he won, because Molten was like, he was like chronoing a zealot, he had two pylons at the front, like he was so ready, he just barely lost it. Immediately leaves no GG, go nice. Hilarious. So funny. I feel so bad.
What do you mean? It's fucking amazing, bro.
I feel bad for Molten. I feel like that was a little bit of cyberbullying.
At Tom Story Cup, at one point, Raynor, completely drunk Raynor, played on a gold account. He just like the guy forgot to log out, and Raynor just played a random game on it. I think it's cool. I think it's fun.
Did
It's a
win?
fucking hilarious story. Yeah, of course he won.
That was really fun. So, to anyone that's thinking, not even just about EpicLAN, but just about LANs in general, they're so fun. It took me so long to get to one. It wasn't until after COVID that I was like, okay, I have to start going, because I started to realize that like the game would be around for that much longer. I need to start going to these events, and then in person, like everyone is so nice and kind of friendly, but you know, you're always like easy. Everyone's easy to talk to because you're all interested in the same thing, and a lot of the kind of I don't know, adjacent things. There are always people that are into, you know, not just nerdy games, but the things that nerds always get up to. So it was a good event. I will say, yeah, you go.
They're always cool. I've been thinking about going to the next EpicLAN too, as I've said many times. Don't be afraid of coming. Like, you can interact with all of your favorite pros. You always meet new friends. You can get smashed. If you are not willing to get smashed, that's also fine. Like, there is so much stuff that you can do that's really fun. Now, I will say I do have an ulterior motive for this. Did you know, Hart, that last time that I went to Home Story Cup, I've gotten several dinner paid by fans?
So you're only going to LAN to get food? Is that what you're telling me?
People came up to me and they were like, "Oh, I'm such a big fan. You're such a cool guy. Do you want to get dinner?" I was like, "You know what? Sure. Who am I to say no? Let's go."
Crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. Be sure to, like, if you go to one of these events and you find me, be sure to say hi, and we'll enjoy this. Yeah, moving on.
Well, hang on, one more thing.
Oh my god!
You're trying to get ahead of us. How is Risky so good? And he never plays, and he doesn't care,
just get
and he shows up, and he just wins. What is that about? What is that?
Bro, GVG is such a clown matchup.
No, but he wins every matchup. All of his group games, he 12-pulled every game. He was just like, alright, whatever, 12-pull. He had like Terrans in there. He was like, whatever, 12-pull. I don't know. Some people are just built different, and I don't think it's not a point necessarily about Risky, but you know, about loads of people. I know Stefano was a classic one where he just like wouldn't play, just show up and just demolish everyone. Wasn't even close. So I don't know. I think there are some people that are just built different, and it doesn't matter if they're like in form or out of form. Because Figaro right now is in form, but the games against Risky just look built different. Crazy.
Yeah, he's actually cracked. It's so fucking good at this game. It's insane.
Okay, now we can talk about
Moving
Stormgate.
on.
Tank Finals.
Yeah. Yeah, no, moving on. For this week, as always, we're gonna do the tournament check. We had the TANC Finals. Well, okay. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I didn't see any because it was overlapping with EpicLAN, so I was
No.
not watching.
This week we had 3 main tournaments, I would say. The TANC Finals, the Aftermath Arena yesterday, and the Team Vanguard versus Team Infernal. I'm pretty sure that all of these were after the last podcast. So I will go in order. Well, there were a bunch of there were also like the Checker, the Russian championships, but those were more. Yeah. So Team Vanguard versus Team Infernal, we saw a solid performance in I would say from Theory and Kivian specifically. While Theory got out after only winning 1 game, it was really impressive. Mana had an insane comeback versus Probe. But unfortunately, like at the end, when only Probe was remaining, parting quickly cleaned up. So cool series, cool show match. I'm a bit sad because this was just after the end of the last big event, which was ECG. So it wasn't actually the meta wasn't as developed as it is right now. There were a bunch of things missing. It was a week ago. It was quite interesting. So pretty cool tournament to watch, but don't expect anything game breaking. Then we have TANC Season 0. So for those who don't know, TANC was the Alpha Navigator. It's a weekly tournament. There have been a bunch of them. And this one was the conclusion to the final one.
Yeah, so the idea was that you played like a weekly, and then there were points associated with that. I don't know the point numbers exactly, but those would then qualify you to the finals at the end, right? So
yes, the only thing that you need to know is that I had one of the highest points in the world.
Which number? Be flex it.
95.
Number 3? Was that
number
third or
number 4 or number 3rd? I don't remember. Because I think above me were Winkle, Theory. Theory had an insane amount of points. And who else was there? There was someone else. I'm just not remembering. Let me. Azure also had slightly more points than me. So it wasn't that big of a difference.
Yeah, but Azure can play in the Oceanic region ones, right? And wins all of those.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because Azure got the Oceanic one gave half points. Okay. But yeah, Azure got more points than me by just winning every single Pacific one. So Winkle is really good though. And Azure is also better than me most likely. So I think it's deserved. Anyway, this was pretty interesting tournament. This was the conclusion of the first season. There were a lot of money on the line actually. 800 USD.
Yeah, for a closed beta tournament with.
Yeah, not bad for a tournament basically made up for the community. This was thanks to the donation, by the way. Thank you everyone who donated on Macerino and allowed us to have such a cool tournament. So anyway,
and Adiko for organizing and everything. That guy's a legend.
So there are a lot of matches that I could talk about because there were a lot of players. It was a 16-player tournament, so there were a lot of with double elimination too. Anyway, but I got out of the winner bracket immediately because I'm a baboon and I threw 2 games against Okram. Well done to Okram. But I made a bit of a comeback in the lower group by beating Ray Rain and Jardozer. And then going out of the tournament by Net Phoenix, I got 6 to 8 place. I'm fine with that. I think it's more about more or less the skill that I expected. So I was fine with that. I got my 40 bucks. I think it was reasonable.
Yeah,
Huge shout out, by the way, to Hydra for his incredibly good performance. That was very surprising in the high bracket. He played really, really well, beating out favorites such as Winkle and going match to match with Theory. So also beating Mixu, by the way, in the very first round. Hydra got one of the hardest bracket and prevailed. Hydra into Nuke Official, into Winkle, into Theory. Holy shit. What a bracket. Other spotlights, well, Theory ended up winning the whole event. and of course that was really cool. So shout out to Theory being one of the better players in the world. Mixu also had some insane game.
Yep.
Mixus versus Winkle, Mixus versus Brob were good. Hydra and Mix went toe to toe in a nail biting best of 5 in the losers final, and Mixu Theory was also pretty interesting in the grand finals.
Yeah, I've been watching those replays. It's interesting how Mixer's been playing in those, and yeah, I think I'm gonna make a video on those in the next few days. For sure.
So I think highlights, if you can find them. I don't know if you can find them anywhere. I think Probe, Mixu, Theory, and Hydra were the spotlight for this tournament with a very solid performance. I played mediocrely, so don't watch my games because there's nothing worth watching there. Cool tournament overall. Thanks to Adico for organizing. You guys should sign up for the what are they called, for the tanks, for the Alpha Navigators Cups.
Yeah,
They're really
next
fun.
kind of seasons, yeah. So,
yeah. Even if you don't do well, even if you don't get to the finals, it's still a lot of fun. You get to interact with a lot of communities. This is basically the EPT daily, the weekly cup, the equivalent.
Yeah, and the format is quite interesting, right? So it's round robin and then kind of groups after that. So you're always guaranteed to play like a good number of games. Whereas EPT weekly, you show up and like you're probably gonna if you meet a pro in the round one, then you're just getting knocked out straight away, and that's you can kind of be done in like less than half an hour. Whereas these games you're guaranteed to play like a good number of games, and quite often the more kind of not necessarily top level people that show up, you're going to get more games that are going to be close and more fun. So that's
yeah. Especially if you're a medium level player, you definitely have chances to take some games out of top players, and because of the group being basically a semi-Swiss system, very often, even if you lose the first or the second game, you're gonna be matched with people that are slightly weaker who also lost their first or second game. So it evens out, and you can perform pretty well even as a not top player. So it's really fun. You guys should try it every week, usually on Saturday, if there is no other tournaments.
So there probably aren't going to be any more now, right? Because there's only
no.
There's
What
only
do
a
you
short
mean? There's
time
literally
left
one.
in the
There's
beta.
literally one tomorrow.
So is there still going to be 2 more, even though the beta's closer soon?
I think so.
More?
Yeah, I think 2. I think 2 more.
One more.
I think
right?
one tomorrow for sure. I think I think one.
Oh no,
tomorrow
one more the
for
week
sure.
after, but not the one after that. So yeah, maybe.
Yeah, one more on the second. I'm assuming the other one is gonna be on the 9th. The game closes down on the 11th or 12th. So I think we're fine. Yeah. So very fun experience. Very disappointed with my performance. Well, not very disappointed. It was a bit disappointed because I feel like I didn't play well, but it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, Night Phoenix is crazy. As soon as I saw that in the bracket, I was like, okay, that makes sense. That's someone.
Yeah,
a good run through like Ray Rain and Jardozer is good, but Night Phoenix is.
Yeah. Night Phoenix. But it wasn't even completely demolished. Like Night Phoenix is a really, really strong player. Moving on the last event that was in this weekly, we had the after Matt Arena, which was actually this morning technically at 4 a.m. for me, in which I also participate. No, I did participate. Yes, because it was replaced because it was a very inconvenient timing. So it was we had Probe against Theory, Mixu versus myself, and Parting versus Probe. No, sorry, Theory Kiwian, Parting Probe, and Lorimbo Mixu. I don't know where the fuck I was reading. I'm just dumb. So very cool match between Parting and Probe. Probe showing why Secluded Groove is such a banger favorite map, and Parting showing why Jack the Mo is such an infernal favorite map. Honestly, I am gonna say this was a lot of map wins. The games between Theory and Kiwian were pretty interesting. Theory, as always, picking Titan's Causeway, the worst map in the pool, but his favorite map. Kiwian performing really well on Broken Crown and Secluded Groove. And the games against Mixu, you should watch them. They were a fucking amazing banger. Watch all 3 of them. The second one I just gave up because it was Secluded Groove, so I didn't even want to play. The third one, I lost, unfortunately. I'm gonna blame. No one is gonna believe me, but I have proof. I got shafted by delivery. Actually.
Yeah. Sure you did.
No! Because I had a package to retire. These fuckers couldn't do it on time. So they show up like 2 hours later than they are expecting while I'm playing the third game. And they start ringing the fucking door. And I didn't want, because if you don't take the package, then you
They'll
have to
take
like
it
go
back.
all.
Yeah.
You have to fucking go to the post office and there's a fucking hassle. So I'm like, okay, I was ahead. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna all in and probably I'm gonna win. I all in, mix holds. I have to tap out and get the fuck out. Very well played by Mix. It was an insane hold though. I don't know what to do, but they were really good games. Watch all of them. They were really, really cool. And I think that's it for this week. Let me double check.
Well,
Let
we
me
could
double
talk
check if I forgot.
a little bit now about the Vulcan Cup and how that's been going.
Oh yeah. We have
Yeah,
the Vulcan Cup. The weekly result. This is a team battle. Very interesting thing. Unfortunately, I cannot tell you guys to play this because they're what's
Yeah,
the word?
registration's shut for now. Yeah.
Yeah, the signs up are already finishing. We finish up with Group A seeing Protoss Alliance. No, sorry. Group A, no one actually played. Everyone has a 1-0 lead because Psystorm Gaming had to drop out. Group B, Aftermath, as expected, with a very dominating 2-0 performance. And 3D Clan with a 1-0-5-0. Not quite sure how that happened, actually.
A 5-0?
Yeah.
In a best
Because
of
they're
5?
2-0 against Aftermath right now, apparently. Interesting. Live. So they won 3-0 and they are 2-0 against
Oh,
Aftermath.
I see.
Wow, that's very impressive. Let's see if they can beat Parting now. Yeah.
Wait, if they're 2-0, it means they've already beaten Albino in theory, probably, right?
No, Theory and Baka.
Okay. But still, a theory they've beaten, so parting might not
Yeah.
be...
B, I'm surprised that B is performing this well. On ladder is strong, but not as strong as some other contestants. So I'm a bit surprised that Theory fell for it because I'm like 5-0 against him.
But these
So
are best of
pretty,
one, so it's pretty volatile.
Yeah. It depends on the map. Which map was it? I'm assuming it's the ladder map. But let me double check because if it was secluded groove, it doesn't see. No, it was Titan's Causeway. Okay, interesting.
Theory's win rate on Titan's Causeway just went from 100% to 99%.
Yeah,
Go over.
lost his first lost his first game on Titans. For Group C, we have Team OP performing quite well with a 2-1 lead. Not quite sure what won. Oh, they lost to the homies. Very
That's
interesting.
Hydra New Thermal's team.
Yes, it was so interesting. But they have Skilos too, who's a top player. Team OP had Kivan, Percival, and Nolsakat, all three very strong players. So I'm a bit surprised that they went down this easily. Then we have the homies, 1-0, as we said. Platinum Heroes and Team Gosu lagging a bit behind for now, but they're only 0-1, so they can always come back. Group D is where I participated with Art. Under the name AllThingsRealTime, of course, the best channel.
Getting the free advertising out there.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe.
So, interesting part. I can give you a bit of the background. We thought, we made, of course, an estimation of the strength of other teams when we were deciding for the lineups, etc. We thought Polska Gurom was going to be the hardest one to beat because they have, very good players. Noxstar in particular. Is really strong, and also Krolu is pretty good. Adagramus is pretty good. Like all of their members are pretty solid. But Winman, but luckily, so I play the first game. I get fucking shafted. You can see it on stream when I start screaming about Vanguard. By the way, so
yeah, someone
can
clipped
do
that,
it.
so you can go and
Yeah. Krolu clipped it. Krolu went back, looked at my stream to where he wins, and clipped where I start raging. Like fucking. So based. But after myself, which I'm fucking shit, we had our secret ace, the Swedish man boss, with a dominating reverse. No, not a reverse sweep. It's an all kill. Just all kills the enemy team completely. Krolu, Adagramus, and Snogstar in a row. Fucking insane, bro. Best.
He's like, okay, I'm gonna go play. All kill incoming, and then immediately all kills. The guy is such a legend.
So fucking based. So fucking waste. So Polska Gurom taking their win after this by beating Team to be determined. As Noxar all killed them. That
So
they changed their captain to Snogstar.
So the format of the kind of thing is that the captain has to play every game, every series, which means they have to go in first. So immediately after our series, they switched. So Snogstar is the captain instead of Crowley. So Snogstar now plays every series.
Yeah.
So that's
And Brethren of Megalomania and the CCCC haven't played yet, so we'll see.
yeah,
How
they're
it's gonna
weaker
go.
teams. I think the Brethren team are definitely the
Actually,
weakest in our group.
these two we have Polska being up 2-0 against CCCC. I'm looking at it right now.
But I think CCCC is a bit weak apart from basically Railgun.
Yeah, but Railgun did not play in this tournament actually.
Oh,
They did not play in this match because it's Vivid, Ably, and now I think Snogstar is playing Pepper Punch. So interesting.
Okay. Pepper Punch is good too, but
yeah,
it's gonna be interesting
okay.
to see.
So this was for this week's Vulcan Team League. Moving on to the next subject.
You've been busy carrying the channel as always.
Yes,
Pumping out content while I was away at EpicLAN.
While Happy
they were
was on
interesting.
vacation.
They were good. I watched your videos on 2x speed, but I watched them all the way to the end, so that counts, right? I wonder actually if YouTube counts that as half watch time or if it counts it as full watch time. Because I watched the whole video.
It used to be bugged.
Okay.
So there was it's half watch time. I know this because at one point there was a guy that made a video that you were supposed to watch in like 0.2 speed and completely broke the algorithm. Because the algorithm would like say, well, this video has a 200% watch time or like a 300% watch time. Or like, this must be amazing. People are watching it 3 times. So it was very, very interesting.
I see.
Trick to pull off. No, anyway, so this week we have been talking about design on this channel. I've been talking about design. So I wanted to make it daily, but then I realized it wasn't feasible. So I've made 3 and now I stockpiled a bit, and they're gonna be distributed during the week, probably from the day after or the day after this podcast episode. I still have to decide that. We are gonna have like a couple, maybe 2 or 3 a week. Still have to decide on that. They're called Design Pill. Is a really good Design Dives. Sorry, Design Pill was the work in progress name. They're pretty good. Watch them. Make sure to tell me how bad I am at designing things and thinking about designs. I played a lot of hours of RTS. I'm a top player in almost every RTS in existence. So I know what I'm talking about. I'm that confident.
Not until you get good at Grey Goo, you can't say that.
Grey Goo. We're gonna do
it's interesting. You've been doing this because essentially for Zero Space, you wrote the manifesto, the famous manifesto.
For people who don't know, for Zero Space, I had a lot of criticism for the game. I had a lot of problems. I had a lot of points that I thought the developer should know. And for Zero Space, I was in a privileged position, being one of the best players in the world. As in actually performing well, even at the final tournament, getting top 8 and winning a decent chunk of money. So I knew that my opinion was going to be at least somewhat valued. I wrote a 13 pages manifesto. I don't know why we keep calling it a manifesto. It was an essay, okay? It was an essay delving. It's basically identical to the design pills, design dive, sorry. Except it was longer, of course, and it was more comprehensive. And I delve in a lot of topics that I did not like, what I liked, how the game felt, how it played, certain things that I didn't like, the way they handled certain things, and so on. And that was the inspiration for the Design Dive series, obviously. Except this one, I thought that there was no fucking way I was gonna write another 20-page essay or something like that. So this time, I've decided to take it with a different approach and just talk generally about concepts that I like. I find them interesting. I've seen the discussions and the writings that I got with them in the Stormgate servers.
Right?
I've been extremely productive. One of them has got 500 plus comments, and the other 2 are like 200 and 100, something like that. I think people really like the approach. They care about what I say. I really like the way they interacted. So this was more of a community effort, and very often you guys give me the inspiration for future videos too. So keep an eye out.
Will
Yeah.
there be no essay for Stormgate? Because you have
I
told me
don't
that
know
you will
yet.
do one. You did tell me you would.
Okay, so I don't know. I don't know. It takes a lot of time to write an essay,
Yeah.
and with zero space, I had the confidence, or at least partial confidence, that someone was gonna read it. With Stormgate, I have no such confidence. I'm a
I
bit
think they
worried
would.
that if
I think they would. I think they're
I'm not sure.
Gerald's around, Monk is around.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure. I feel like it could be wasted effort, or even worse. I feel like my criticism, which was, I assure you, very polite. I try to be as non-confrontational as possible,
Yeah.
and I
I've
got
seen the essay. It's polite. It's good.
like I've tried to be really like explain why I think this doesn't work or that doesn't work. My objective never was and never will be to start a flame war. I'm not interested in balance whining, or rather, I am, but this was not the point of the essay. And this is the same goes for design dives. Whenever you watch one or you read anything that I write, keep in mind that very often I'm more interested in why certain things feel fun or frustrating, compared to actually just saying, well, I think this race is too strong, let's just nerf it, because I think that's a very unproductive behavior, and also it's incredibly biased, of course, so completely pointless. I don't know if I'm gonna write one art. I might just write one which is a compilation of my design dives. I've considered
I
both
think you
things.
can just be more brief and just try and really get to the point, get very like I don't
I
know,
was
very
not
direct and
born
very
with the gift of what would you say it in English?
brevity.
Succinct?
It's a
Yeah, brevity, being
yeah.
succinct. I was never. I have the
You know,
opposite problem. I'm incredibly winded, and like just generally I speak a lot and I think a lot. I talk a lot. So impossible. Even in my writing, bro. Every time I'm like, fuck, I'm like 200,000 words over the limit.
yeah.
I've always been this way. So
So yeah, and I think you touched on a really important point, which is like when it comes to design, there are things that are important when you consider design in both a balance and a kind of what actually feels good and what feels fun way. And it's really hard to separate those out and try and kind of, yeah, make sure that your criticism is towards one and not the other. Because losing, especially when it feels unfair, inherently doesn't feel fun. And it's hard to make a game that feels fun to lose. But at the same time, yeah, I don't know. I guess it's hard to it's
I
hard
do
both
not
ways.
think that fun and frustrating exist on the same spectrum. Something can be fun and frustrating. Something can be
Hmm.
unfun and not frustrating.
I remember the
Uh,
Sudoku arc. Yeah, I was there.
yeah, yeah, and anything in between. That was mostly you being frustrated.
I
To be
fucking
fair,
hate Sudoku and crossword. It's the worst.
I, he says that he does like multiple crosswords with boss every evening,
I hate every
and with
single one of
me
them.
sometimes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So anyway, I do not think that they exist like on a singular spectrum.
Hmm.
I think they exist in a more complicated environment. I will this like a 2D graph, R2, whatever you want to call it, but I think that's too technical. The way I think about it is the following: everything that's fun can also be frustrating, not only for you but also for the opponent.
Hmm.
And I remember reading a discussion with that Spartak made. And Spartak, if you're reading this, this is not a personal attack, to be clear. I really, really, really disagree with what you said. So Spartak pointed out that the recent discussion of trend that was trending in the playtest feedback part was gravitating towards making the game less frustrating. And he posted a video by
Yeah.
day 9 in which he was talking about how certain changes that make the game less frustrating also make it less fun. And to a point, like I agree with the original day 9 video, but I do not think that it applies here.
Can you
As
explain
if,
what Day 9 said? I can't think of an example off the top of my head.
well, day 9 was saying, well, sometimes there are mechanics that can be very frustrating and very fun, or sometimes they are just very fun and like a bit frustrating, right? So if you go around trying to solve frustration without considering fun or
Mm.
balancing it out, you risk going into a game that's very bland.
Yeah. So we
And
could
he
say, for
pointed out
example, banelings might be really frustrating to play against. Like when they connect with your group of your marines, you're just like, oh, I
yes.
just lose, I just lost. But they can also lead to very fun and engaging kind of interactions, and it feels
Yeah.
great when you snipe all the banelings, and you
But
see,
even
you know,
against the balance, it can be like when you have the perfect split when you snipe.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
just because the unit itself is boring and frustrating. This is one of the very few things. Monk, if you are reading this, I completely agree. This is one of the smartest things that Monk has ever said. He said, I find that boring units actually very often create the most fun interaction. And I completely agree with Monk. It's very easy to fall into the trap, and I feel like Spartak is falling into this trap of having a unit be overtuned to be fun. So this unit can do anything. It's fast, it's strong, it doesn't die, it does a lot of damage, has 20 different abilities, etc. But I do not think that goes for like that doesn't create very good fun. Okay, it's a bit of fun because the unit is overpowered, but first off, it impacts balances. And secondly, it also creates a lot of frustration for the enemy player who struggles to find counterplay with the unit. In my opinion, units that are simple can be extremely fun because the fun of a good RTS is in the interaction and never in the units. A good
So
RTS
yeah,
is made by how the units interact,
yeah.
not the single design of a unit. People were like, oh, I have a great idea for like this crazy unit that does all of these crazy things. That's not good design. That's not
Like
how a game works.
like when disruptors used to teleport to where they last exploded. Do you remember that?
I've
Like,
never played that much.
yeah, when it would like shoot the Nova. Whoa, your webcam went off.
Oh,
Crazy. There you go. We're back. It would shoot the Nova, and then when the Nova finished, it would do the damage, and then the disruptor would go there. It's these sorts of things that's so, I guess, overcomplicated. I think a really good example of what you're talking about is in AoE3, where the units are really like relatively simple. It's guys with swords, guys with uh
the
bows,
AO3?
guys on a AoE4. Sorry, no
I
AoE3.
was very confused. I was like,
Because the
AO3, I do
because
not think.
producer pad
Yeah,
just flashed on the screen and I got baited.
yeah. Producer Pad is a big fan of AO3. We know that.
AoE4. So
Yeah.
I guess as the kind of ages go on, you get into higher tech stuff, but really they're not crazy like out of this world complex or weird. Obviously they're based on like historical things, historical
Yeah, all the units in Age of
weapons.
Empires
So
are quite simple, I would
I
say.
mean, you've got like cannons and trebuchets and catapults, but like ultimately they are just the general category of siege weapon, right? So I think it's a really good kind of image of your point that
Yeah, but not
loads of
only
people
that.
play a game where it's people with sticks hitting people with bows, and that goes on for 10-15 minutes, and that's plenty fun.
more more importantly, what I really like about the way Age of Empires handles this is how low. Well, it has a bit of a problem, in my opinion, between feudal age and castle age in
Yeah.
how the upgrade work. But outside of that, in the more late game, there is a very interesting dynamic in which units that are higher tier do not necessarily win against units that are lower tier. For example, very often when you have siege is very powerful, but also somewhat fragile. So if you're out of position, it can be sniped by the enemy siege. There is siege countering siege, but there is also cavalry countering siege, positioning countering siege, splitting countering siege. So it creates a more complex interaction than just, well, my unit is higher tier, it costs more, therefore it wins.
Yeah,
I think units like that are better. Units
they
that can
did
scale or
just
that creates this kind of dynamic.
they did just change that villagers could burn siege weapons down, though, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, that's
that's the
another interesting. I
lowest
think.
tier versus the highest tier. I think
Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know. I think
They
that's a fine change. I'm not very clued up on AoE4, so I won't talk too much about it, but
Yeah,
makes sense to me.
they buffed siege, but the interesting part was like that villagers, for example, have the ability to burn rams, which was pretty impactful in games where you were attacking. Like a bunch of design decisions that Age has made through the years have been pretty interesting in creating this more interactive thing. Now, don't get me wrong, there are places in Age of Empires where the interaction doesn't feel that great. Specifically stuff like archers versus cavalry, where you feel like you literally can't do anything.
Yeah, some of the counters
Uh,
are really hard, right? Where it's like
yeah, so
just
like that.
rock paper scissors level counters, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's sometimes it's really hard because the counter is just so strong. It does so much damage, it's so much faster, and it feels like once you do a mistake, you lose your whole army. But that's That's something that can be explored maybe in a future video about escaping and movement. Like a movement speed, I've already touched upon. I've already explained how movement speed
Yeah,
and
we can talk
escaping.
about that now. Yeah, so you talked about it in your second video. Can you kind of
Yeah.
summarize that video?
Yeah, well, my video was talking about how important movement speed. That's the gist of it. Movement speed is a very, very, very impactful statistics. I felt like Frost Giant was taking it a bit too light. But movement speed and range are the most defining characteristic of a unit, way more than damage HP or DPS or whatever. And I think they were changing them very aggressively. And I had that feeling very often that they were not super in the known about how those small changes had
Would affect the
huge
matchup. So,
impacts.
for example, you could say cars, which were the fastest unit in the game and were just whole digits faster than the
Yeah.
other like units that are considered very quick. They only recently, I think, set fiends. They've been messing with fiend speed up and down. And for a while they were way too fast, and then they were way too slow. And I think they're in a good spot now. I believe they're the exact same speed as a dog, right?
They're the exact same speed as when they were too fast. Just so you know.
But I think they also made the dogs faster then.
Yeah. The problem wasn't that fins were too fast.
Yeah.
The bigger
It was
problem was the fact that the dog was slower than the
too
fins.
slow. Yeah.
Yeah, like that was the big
So the
actual
dynamic at
problem.
that time, just for people who are, because obviously this came from a time when the NDA was very much in force, right? The idea, you start with the dog as Vanguard, you'd send the dog across the map and you'd harass. But if the Infernal made a brute, which only cost 100 at the time, basically the objectively best play was to split the brute instantly because the fiends would catch the dog 100%. Whereas
Actually,
now the fiend cost changed and the movement speed changed, so that's not so much.
If you look mana play in the tournament, like the tournaments that they had at DreamHack, I think Atlanta, he does that every single game. Because I remember watching him when he played against
TLO.
who was that? Yeah, TLO in the final. No, TLO in the semi-finals.
No,
He played
Moon
in the finals. Yeah, and I think he does that every single game. I think that's that's actually like the perfect representation of why that interaction was frustrating. So that was the summary of my video. I was pointing out examples of how impactful speed is and how it morphs units. If you want a better example, you can watch the first video on Lancers or the third video on air units. Those are concrete examples of units that become problematic once they are too slow or too fast. So those are very good examples. So that's all of the design videos are tied up. They refer to each other. They put like, oh, well, look, like I said that because my opinions tend to be consistent over the course of months. In the sense, I think a lot about them. So usually I have a pretty clear picture of how a game works. Like I have a complete picture of the whole game in my mind. And I don't just have an opinion on a specific unit. So those videos are really interesting. But I wanted to make a point actually, Art. I know I'm talking too much, but I wanted to say something that I feel is really important. And I can ask you, I want to start this by asking you a question. Okay. Do you think it's possible to change the design of a unit without affecting balance? And do you think it's possible to change the balance of a unit without affecting how it's played? So its core identity.
I would say some and some to both, which is a bit of a non-answer. I'll give an example for the latter. I'll start with the latter. The Hornet at the start of this playtest was completely busted, and very quickly it got massively nerfed. At that time, the context it was played in was like as a rush, and you'd sprint straight for Hornets, and you'd make a Hornet as quickly as you could and get across the map as quickly as you could. And this led to like builds that were just giga optimized for Hornet rushing. When it got nerfed, that stopped being a thing. There's no such thing as like the ultra mega Hornet rush where we try and just get a Hornet out as fast as we can. You'd agree with that, right?
Yes, but I was more thinking about how the actual Hornet fights play out.
Yes, and that's the other thing, right? Is that for the context where the Hornet was still played later in the game, I think it still fills all of those roles despite having been rebalanced, right? So I think the contexts where it used to be good in, it's still good, and people were still making it. It's just that now the context where it was overpowered, it has been rebalanced, and people hopefully don't like sprint and rush to Hornets as quick as they used to.
I disagree with this actually.
Okay.
I would say the Hornets at the moment have changed identity. A bit, not that much. I still think they have some problems. As in the air units video, I explained why I think it covers a bit too many roles at the same time.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, when the Hornet Rush was a thing, the Hornet was a fighting menace. You will just literally get on top of guns and just start fighting and destroy them.
Yeah.
Had so much damage, so much DPS, you couldn't deal with it with guns. So you had to go Shadow Flyers. Now, with the nerf to DPS, suddenly the role of it has changed significantly. You go for them later, you go for mass Hornets, and the objective is to snipe bases, force reaction, and have a more supportive role. They are still pretty decent at fighting, but now you can fight them somewhat with mass gaunt, and you can just dive on top of 20 guns and emerge victorious with a shield. That's not a thing anymore thanks to the nerfs. So in my opinion, that's an excellent point, like an excellent example of how balancing a unit changes the way it's played.
Kind of, but I would say that Probe was still playing like really heavy Hornets up until EGC when he tried to play it against
Parting.
Parting. Yeah, we saw him in those
Yeah.
games making loads of Hornets, and he wasn't like rushing to them, but he was making
No.
them really early and making a lot of them.
Yeah, and then he died
So
to
that was
Parting
still, and then
playing
he
mass
died,
gaunt.
obviously.
Yeah,
But that was still,
playing mass
but
gaunt.
it was still obviously a thing that he thought would work. He still had a lot of trust and faith in the unit even at that time, is what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was wrong. I mean, what can I say? I think I was not like. I think that the time, I think that wasn't the smartest meta ever. Like it doesn't like after the double nerf, the Gaunt actually can trade it with it somewhat. Hornets are
Yep.
not as menace anymore
Yeah.
because they don't kill towers
Yeah.
as quickly, they don't kill workers as quickly, and then if you get pushed specifically, they become like the
Yes.
biggest problem with going Hornets is that you die to Gaunt or Lins, and that's what Parting did every single game. Just
It's
Gaunt
like
impo Lining.
it's like playing Blue Flame Hellions against someone who's roach rolling you, and it's like cool.
Yeah.
I can kill loads of lings and kill loads of drones, but as soon as I get the roaches are in my natural, the Hellions are not going to help me that much.
Yeah, exactly.
So what was your
So
first point?
what?
Sorry, you said can you rebalance a unit and it maintains the same role?
Yeah,
And can you?
and I ask you if you can change the design of a unit without affecting balance.
Tricky one.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Well, kind of inherently, I guess not. If it's good, people will start to use it in a way and try and overuse it, maybe like they did with the Hornet. If you're going from a unit that's relatively unused to a really strong unit that now people are trying to get a lot of use out of, if it's a unit that is very bread and butter and people make every game, I guess you can. It can. I guess you would still use it the same way. I'm trying to think. So if you like remade the Marine, would people still have their army be mostly Marines? And I can see designs where the Marine is different, but it's still like the bread and butter unit for Terran, for example. But I don't see how that would be considered like a massive redesign. I can't see a massive redesign that changes the context of it completely.
I agree with this mostly. I think it's a matter of what you mean by redesign.
Yeah.
Basically. So of course, if by redesign you mean adding 1 point of damage, then no,
Yeah, or
you can
one extra
definitely.
range. Like the
Yeah,
EXO got slightly more expensive and has one range. Is it redesigned? Probably not.
I think that changes identity though, so I think it's a bad example.
But did it change the way that people were using it? I feel like not
Yes. No, yes, significantly.
really. Really?
Yes. I never ran into the problem before. It was a double
Well,
thing. It was
yes.
it was the Magmadon and the Exo.
Well, and the
That was
Infest. The Infest was a really big change.
well, yes and no actually. Because the problem was that well, not really a problem, but the change was that with the change of the Magmadon losing charge and the Exo having that extra head range, there is nothing that catches an Exo. Well, now there are Hellborns that go out like that. That's once again how it changed again. So these are a perfect example how a design of a unit can be changed by the design of other units. Like a unit that does not get changed can still change its identity or the balance, just by virtue of everything else being different, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's something you have to keep in count. But the reason why I asked you this question, outside of specific examples, because, and I want this to be very clear, we should make a short about this. I don't know, because I think this is a very important message. I think that people underestimate how connected balance and design are. Very often I've seen concerns, not only my concerns, because I'm a fucking nobody, but concerns from everyone, top players, medium players, just the majority of players, being dismissed as, well, you have a problem with a balance, not with the design of the. But that's not true. You don't have a problem with the balance or the design of the game. You either have a problem with both or you have a problem with neither. Because a balance problem is also a design problem, and a design problem very often results in balance problem. The two are inevitably linked. If you ever find yourself saying you don't dislike this unit because it's badly designed, you just dislike it because it's too OP, it has too many stats, that's part of the design. A tank unit is defined by how much it can tank, by the HP pool, by the passive, by the armor that it has. A skirmish unit is defined by how quickly it moves, by how easy it is to make run-bys, etc., etc. You cannot just de-link the two. Just say, well, actually, if we just nerfed this thing about the lance, it will be perfect design. No, because that's just a bandit fix. And we
But
see
when you say
this.
that, you mean when you nerf by knocking off like 2 points of damage?
Yeah, exactly. For example, if you think, for example, I think the Lancer is badly designed. I've said this before. I think and by badly designed, I think that at the moment the double identity which I talk in the episode, as I said, is problematic. It creates for a very unintuitive counterplay, if there is any counterplay at all, and the unit is overtuned. But those two things that are not separate.
Yeah.
You could make it not overtuned anymore, but just like it doesn't do any damage anymore.
So the way
Now,
I kind
suddenly
of
it's
think about it,
completely useless.
yeah, for sure. Well,
But I
except
wouldn't fix
as
the
a
core
tank, it
issue.
has a identity as a tank,
Yeah,
and it can
you
still
morph
fill a
the
role as a
identity.
tank, just not.
Yeah, you
as a
morph
tank.
the identity, but most agree would say, oh well, this is clearly not a balance fix. It's an identity fix because now it can fucking attack. So of course, like the two things, like separating the two things, is in my opinion a very simplistic way of looking at the game. In separating design and balance, and I've had this problem a lot with Frost Giant, where they're like, we are not interested in balance changes. There is no such thing as a balance change. There is no such thing. A balance patch is not a balance patch. It affects design too. Now you can always try to like.
We could say, for example, the Hornet when it was really
The
overtuned.
Hornet.
No one was ever going to make a drop against a Hornet. It would be suicide. The drop would die so fast, and you'd be investing so much in getting to Conclave with tier 2 tech for a drop that you'd just die to the Hornet before it even came out. So when the Hornet was overpowered, drops were probably not overpowered. But now the Hornet is less powered, and drops are seen like basically every game.
But not only that, because that you're talking about balance. So when one thing was strong, another thing was weak. But that's just balance. Like you could be interpreted that as well. You see, art is actually
we change this number, we change that number, and we can fix the balance. That's not really what I'm saying.
I would say that nerfing the Hornet made a pre-existing design problems come to light.
Yes.
Because the problem already existed in Infernal versus Infernal. And the problem was how tier works with the Dawnbringer. The fact that it's too easy to get, it's too cheap, it's too tanky. It covers a multitude of things. So for example, you can harass with it, but you can also use it for repositioning the army. There's a bunch of problems. I probably should make a dropship
Definitely, that's the next video
episode
for sure.
Yeah, but so those designs issues that were already present were covered by the balance, but were already present. So this is an example of a balance change made a unit that was previously just using a very limited or non-existent manner,
or not in one matchup, and it now becomes
an incredible unit that can cover all roles. You can attack, you can defend, you can recall it back, you harass, you reposition your army, you do 20 different things with drops now. But the drop wasn't changed. And more important, it was not a balance change. It's not like the drop got like now
10
it's
extra armor and now
stronger.
everyone's spamming it. Yeah.
So as I said, I think this is the most important thing. If I read one more guy telling me that's just a balance problem, I'm gonna have an aneurysm. That's stop talking about RTS by defining like balance and design as things that are completely different. They are not. They are one and the same. Now you can make a differentiation. You can say, well, okay, some things like, of course, if we make a change that morphs the unit identity, well, that's clearly more about design. You can always go into that discussion. But overall, as a baseline, the two things are not separated. And I hope that Frost Giant understands this. That when people say the game is imbalanced, even though they're using the wrong word for it, what they really mean is this design is frustrating. This design is not fun. And it's not necessarily even fun for the player that's using the overpowered units. That's what I said when they say, no, it's not frustrating. It's just unfun. Because I can tell you that when like playing Mass Gaunt before they got nerfed to 5, and just spamming Gaunt to winning every game against Infernal versus Infernal or Infernal versus Vanguard was not fun. It was the worst. It was terrible. It was some of the most boring games ever were played.
And I think you've been feeling relatively constricted recently as well, just because drop play is so prominent. It really feels like you just have to play drops in Infernal versus Vanguard.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
everyone I play against plays drops, and then you either are trying to like make your own meta where you're the one guy that's trying not to use that unit, or you're just like, okay, this is just a necessary evil of the matchup, and you just have to play that way.
Yeah, but once again, it's the same problem as before. It's not a balance problem.
Yeah.
Like it's not like, oh yes, if only X or Y was strong. No, it's okay. Why does a dropship? Why can a dropship go so get out so fast? Why there is such a significant lack of anti-air?
Yeah, well, this is the third video. It's about the anti-air.
Yeah, exactly. So like, those are the problem. They're not like, oh, let's just let's halve the health, half the speed. That would morph it. That would maybe quote unquote fix the problem, but it will fix a problem. It will not fix the underlying design. That's like, okay, why do we not have anti-air? Why are these units hard to interact with? Well, maybe this time, okay, yeah, we solved this problem with the specific Doombringer, and then you have the evac with the tank, the Atlases, and then you have the Hornet.
Yeah.
And you have, I don't know, in a future patch, maybe the Spriggans. And you're like, well, it didn't solve anything. That didn't solve the underlying problem. Tier 3 here, if that exists, yeah, the producer pad also says a thing. Like, you didn't fix anything. You just put a band-aid on it. You have to think carefully about how balance changes affect your design, the roles that you need to cover, the way they play out. Please, Frost Giant, heed this warning. Heed my warning.
It's time for the manifesto. It's got to be done.
Time for the manifesto. Do not get baited into thinking that you can always fix balance later. Don't think, oh well, as long as the people like the game, because the only design that has nothing to do with balance is visual design. Because of course,
yeah. Well, this kind of circles back to the point we talked about earlier, which is that you might not even be right about that, and the visual design is one of the things that can add to the frustration. And when I hear people talk about frustration and how remove all the frustration,
visual clarity
will be better. Visual clarity is a way to nerf things. The imp change is something that you feel has actually nerfed the imp, in that when you used to push the button once, it would activate all of them. Now you have to hold the button or push it a bunch of times, and this like slows you down in activating them.
You have to believe me.
I believe you.
It's very annoying. Ask anyone.
I will say, the most obvious thing that springs to mind for me is Brood War. And in Brood War, you have a selection limit on all of your units. You can't F2 and select everything. So if you have more than a few
12
units, 12 units, but then let's say you're up to 48 units, when you make the 49th, which obviously doesn't happen much in Brood War, let's say, when you make that one, the 49th, you've run out of hotkeys that you can reasonably use, like control groups that you can reasonably use, right? Like if you've got production on a couple, like a CC on a couple, then production on another one. Now you've got to have 5 control groups.
You don't get anything in in hotkeys. You don't get buildings in hotkeys.
Oh, that's true as well.
You can only put one building in hotkey in Brood War. So like everyone literally pans over and just
And
click,
selects each
click.
racks, resets the
Yeah.
rally. Yeah, I mean you can't even rally CCs, right? You have to go and grab the worker and tell it to mine.
Yeah.
And
There
it's
is
things
no
like
rally. There
this
is nothing.
that when I played Brood War for 2 games when Remastered came out, I was like, this is so annoying. It's just like it's and it can be a balance change as we've discussed. It's like inherently linked to basically everything at this point, but it's just so annoying to have to like try and select all my units. They're all like we can say what you like about the pathing. I'll not get to that just yet. Everyone tells me it's good. It didn't feel great when I played a bit of Brood War. But when I get to too many units, I end up just having to like keep box selecting and trying to a click and make sure everyone was doing as they were told and trying to control groups choose which units should be in a control group versus like I can't have control groups for my lings. I've got too many, so those I just have to kind of try and keep track of and box select and try and control them. And it's like I see that people can be good at it, and it's honestly really impressive that people are succeeding despite limitations. But it's annoying to me to have to play with limitations when you don't need to. And that, for me, is why I think StarCraft will always have a bigger player base than Brood War. StarCraft 2, I should say, has a bigger player, but will always have a bigger player base
Yes.
than Brood War. Just because things just work. There are so many quality of life features, and it's not, for me, about me versus my opponent. And I say there's a unit I find really frustrating. Let's call it the Cyclone. There's a unit that I find frustrating to play against, and I'm getting annoyed at that unit. But at least then I'm getting annoyed about some kind of design. Whereas if it's just lack of quality of life changes, I'm not frustrated at my opponent. I'm frustrated at the core of the game, and it feels like I don't know, trying to play with mittens on or something. Do you know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like we could just not do this.
You feel like you're not fighting your opponent. You're fighting the game engine.
Yeah, and we're not fighting each other. We're both fighting against the engine to get to each other. I
Yeah.
remember
It's.
a really obvious one is well, for a game that you will never play, Far Cry 3, which is a first-person shooter.
I played it.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Far Cry 3, you have to skin animals. You don't have to. You can skin animals, especially for money, right? Every time in Far Cry 3, it plays that skinning animation every single
Which
time. And it's
takes
like, I've
takes
killed
forever.
1,000 animals. I have to watch this, like, I don't know, 5 second? It might be like 5, 6 second animation. Someone can fact check how long the animation is. It feels like a lifetime when you've seen it for the 1,001st time. And then you play Far Cry 4 and they just got rid of it. If you just press the button, it just does it. And it's like, I'm less irritated because I have to watch this animation over and over and over again, driving me insane. While the core of the game hasn't changed, it hasn't gotten any worse for me. It's like I just feel like there's less in the way of me actually just having a good time with the game. And I think there's fair points about oversimplifying things, and you make every game a rails shooter where it's like very linear. You don't have lateral movement. It's just forwards and backwards like an arcade game. But at the same time, I think there's a spectrum, let's say, between things that are very irritating through to things that are, in my opinion, necessary. I think what's interesting about this conversation maybe is, and I'm not trying to strawman anyone, but I wonder how many people who are talking about frustration in games, for example, would support Frost Giant when they come back and say, "Oh, there's now a 12 unit limit on selecting anything." Because most of those people would not be like, no, all of them would be like, that's not what I meant, that's not what I meant. Undo it, that's too annoying, right? I will say there are a couple that will be like, good, I love it. And those people you should never listen to about anything. That's all I'm saying. Run over.
What's his name? The guy, I cannot say his name. It's how slur. The guy from Brood War. Have you ever seen the guy?
Oh,
Do you
yeah,
know what I'm
okay.
talking
I
about?
didn't watch
Yeah,
the
yeah.
video, but I did see him complaining. Yeah, I do know who you're talking
It's
about.
so bad. It's so bad.
And you're allowed to like things, but I think it's worth noting that not everyone will like the same thing. And when you're designing a game, it honestly needs to go for a certain level of appeal. It doesn't need to be mass appeal. It doesn't need to be like I can't like lowest common denominator is what people call it, right? Like it doesn't need to be Call of
Yeah.
Duty number 45,000 and it's just cookie cutter, or a FIFA game where it's like this. It's none of the mechanics change, just the players in the game change, right? But
Yes.
I think you need to realize that like some things are always going to be niche, and there needs to be niche games with active communities for those people. But we need to decide on a level of I guess basic function in a game that we're all agreed need to be in there. I don't know.
Well, the thing that I always say is that I think you have to make a distinction between core mechanics and fluff, extra
Mhm.
fluff, right? So the thing that you should focus on is having the core mechanics feeling good, feeling great, and stuff. And I think at the moment Stormgate does have a problem in that part. Moving unit does not feel fun. Like the core mechanic, what are the core mechanic of our RTS? Let's think about it, right? Critically. Moving units, taking formations, attacking, defending, macroing, producing. Those are the core concepts. Right? Those are the things that you do every game, no matter what.
Mhm.
Building stuff, etc. So if any of those things feel bad or they are not complete, then suddenly you have a big problem. And I can say for Stormgate, there are several things that do not feel bad, that do not feel good. Moving is hassle.
Yes,
Attacking is
especially with
hassle.
ranged and melee units, and
Yes,
trying to get the melee units where you want them and the ranged units where you want
exactly.
them. Yeah.
Attacking is a hassle. Building is not necessarily a hassle, but it's not great. Let's just put it this way. I heard a lot of complaint about the way certain things works. For example, how the bobs,
Well,
mechanics are so weird, etc.
they're a bit funky at the moment. I think those are not design choices, but definitely bugs. But we can talk there about I think where Frost Giant have done a really good thing, and I think is a nice change, where your buildings for units and buildings controls are I don't know how to explain it. You have automated control groups for your production, basically, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
instead of having to hotkey all of your barracks and press
That's really
3, or
good. I
control group
agree.
all of your barracks press 3, you can press W, which will have all of your production on it by default, and queue
Yeah.
things up that way. And I think this is a nice change that makes the game a little bit easier in a
No,
really
wait.
nice way without easier my with it.
I'm gonna correct you.
Go for it.
You wanna know what makes it nice? It's not the auto cut.
I
That's
don't
not the
mean
problem.
yeah, well,
It's the fact that you can have different production buildings
yeah.
at the same time. So you
So
can produce from a conclave
yeah,
and
and
from
an
a
iron bolt.
iron bolt
Yeah,
without having to
the tab
tab.
between them. Yeah, because
That's
obviously
what really changes.
Terran players either have all their racks on one on control group and their factories on different control group and their starports on different control group, or they have them all on the same and then they tab between them, and it just
Yeah,
feels a little bit clunky and slow. Whereas we
it's very
now
clunky.
in the year 2024 have the technology to not have to worry about that. And I think one
Yeah,
thing that I always found weird is that Protoss have a hotkey for their warp gates. You just press W as all of your warp gates. But it's not like Zerg have a hotkey for all of their lava, and you just press W and it selects all of your lava. Or you press W and it selects all of your barracks.
it wouldn't be
So
a bad change actually.
what if you had lava hotkey?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it would be fine.
I
It just
wouldn't
it was
mind
weird
it.
to me that it was asymmetrical. Is what I'm is
Yeah,
what I'm
but
saying. Whereas now the
once again,
asymmetry is gone, and it makes
when people
the game a
complain
little bit more
about this, is
fluid.
yeah, like it's like or like people think that, for example, the auto changing the warp gate thing was bad.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting point. We can talk about that actually. So there are two different arguments
You'll
here.
need to explain it a little bit, the
Yeah.
background.
Okay. So yeah. For people who don't know, a gate is the basic production building for Proto. Creates almost all of the basic units, let's call it, which are known as gate units.
Mhm.
They just produce like an iron bolt or a rack just produces next to it. But there is one very important upgrade that you get early game called Warp Gate. A Warp Gate gives you the ability to transform a gate into a Warp Gate. And what that does is that instead of having to create the units in the spot where the gate is, it allows you to create them whenever you want instantly. So it goes from a production similar to Vanguard to a charge system similar to Infernal, but with the added bonus of being able to warp anywhere that there is energy, which is
Yeah, a
through
power field.
pylons.
Yeah.
Or yeah, there is a bunch of things. But think about it limited in certain positions. Let's
That's
put
kind
it
of
this way.
extra info for what you're talking about now,
Yeah,
which
yeah, yeah.
is
The interesting part is it changes the way the structure works. From a production-based, I click a button, I wait 20 seconds, and the unit pops out, to I make the warp gate, I wait 20 seconds for a charge, I click a button, and the unit immediately warps in. So that's the difference. So there, at one point, for a long time in Starcraft history, warp gate had to be manually changed for each gate. So once you had the upgrade, every gate you have to click on it and select transform into warp gate.
yeah,
And
the
it
whole
will
thing was
transform and then
G, because this was in a time when I was still playing Protoss. You had to
yeah.
press G and transform your warp gates from gateways into warp gates manually. And I think a point to point out here is that there was no real incentive to keep them as gateways. It was never a choice. It was never like,
Yes.
no, this one I'm going to have it as a gateway because I'm. So for a time, someone fact check me, please. For a time, it was actually quicker to make zealots out of a gateway than a warp gate, excluding time for them to run across the map. I think it was something like 20 seconds to make a zealot, let's say, and 23 was the cooldown when you warped in a zealot. So it was slightly quicker if you kept it as a gateway versus warped it into a warp gate. But no one was in a game being like, actually, this one I'm going to leave, or, actually, I'm not going to morph these yet because I'm making zealots and it's technically mathematically quicker. There was no choice. It was always, warp gates finished, I'm going to make these into warp gates.
Yeah.
So they have recently changed, not recently, they changed it.
So what I wanted to say is that there are two ways you could see this problem, and they lead to drastically different outcomes. So this is an example of conflicting designs, conflicting design principles. So on one hand, you want choice to be meaningful. Choices are important. Meaningful choices are even more important. They feel great. When you do the choice and you feel like you got the right choice and your choice impacted the game in a positive or negative manner, you feel great, especially if the choice is informed. So you scout, you make a decisions based on your scouting, and then you win the game because you made the correct call. That's one of the greatest thing about playing Zergs, is playing is doing something like that. And in that sense, you would hope for it to be more choices about whether to choose a warp gate or a gateway, so to keep it transformed or untransformed, depending on the situation. So this is the first principle, which seems to lead like, okay, like for example, let's make it so that if you don't use warp gate, then you actually research it slightly quicker, or your units are slightly stronger, or maybe they spawn with all the shield compared to half shield, etc., 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 like stuff like this, right? And this is the first principle. The second principle will be, you don't want your game, the principle that we were discussing before, you want them to make the interactions and the choices about your opponent, about interacting with your opponent. Such a choice feels more like, oh, I'm fighting a hustle. Like I have an APM Sink, similar to how injects are, or creep. Now, I will argue that the creep and injects are, they do not have a choice. So there is something to say there. But I fear that if there was a meaningful choice, now suddenly a lot of Protoss gameplay revolves around being able to like correctly determine whether or not you want the warp gate or the gateway, or like just manually checking every time you build a gate that you do, and it feels really hassle. I, for one, go more for the choice in this case, because I think that the drawback is not that big. You don't make that many gates anyway. Like maybe the most I've seen is like 16 at the very most. So that's 16 extra clips
In a
in a
very
game,
late game. Yeah.
right? I've seen 20 technically in very late game, but at that point you're making like, it's like when you're like, okay, I made
To
6
pick an
Stargate.
average. Yeah.
Yeah. An average is like
An
10,
average is like 10 or
10 to
12.
12.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about the average gate so in a game. So I think the drawback of being an annoying APM Sink is significantly outweighed by the interesting design choices that you can make after that. But not everyone thinks the same, and people say the same about the way that Brood War works. So, for example, certain choices become a lot more meaningful in Brood War, exactly because units are hard to move, or you cannot easily move from one part of the other to the other, or whether or not you can stack your unit is another good example. That's a decision design that has an effect that's very impactful. So on one hand, it allows you for more precise control, allowing to stack. On the other hand, it means that a Scourge kills 20 mutas. Right? Allora, in that moment, it feels really frustrating, etc. So there is like the people that like Brood War, and they say, well, actually, all of those mechanical limitations create more choices. So it's always a fine line between creating more choices, but also making the game more about skill checks and just APM sinks. For people who don't know what an APM sink is, something that you just have
So
to do that requires
yeah,
some attention every once in a while.
yeah.
And
I
just
think of it like a chore. There's like
yeah,
chores that you
sure.
have to do. Like there's your washing builds up over time. Now you have to go and do the washing, and it's like not a thing that you really love to do, but you have to do it. In the washing case, it's to like be a real human and be alive. In the game, it's like, I have to go and inject. I have to go and spread creep. I think there's an interesting point here where if you remove all of the chores, RTS becomes MOBA ultimately. I think
No, I
there's
disagree with that.
I think there's a fine line to walk where you need. Oh, my computer just said that it might be snowing. Yeah, yay March. Anyway, I think there's a fine line to walk between removing all of the irritating chores and making the game much more simple versus making the game irritating to play, but the game then allows a much higher level of skill expression. And I think if you oversimplify the game, you run out of actions that players with a lot of actions to use can do. So the reason that Cyril is the GOAT is because he never misses an inject, his creep spread is insane, so he's got the APM to spend on controlling his army and playing, doing, let's say, non-chore activities, but he also has the control for doing his chores in a really good time. He's got a really good rota, a really good schedule, let's say. Whereas if
Yeah.
you remove them from the game, so okay, here's an example. It takes 300 APM to play high level Starcraft. If you start trimming away bits of Starcraft that are annoying, you can get it down to like 200, then 150, then 100. And the number of players that can play at 300 APM is quite small. The number of players that can play at 300 APM well, there's loads of people who can spam hotkeys and then miss all their timings. That's fine.
Yeah, we're
Once you
talking
start
about like actually
actually
good
playing,
APM.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's say EPM. Then when we get
No, because
down,
that is also awful.
then
That
we
is
get down
also
to
awful.
100 APM. The number of players that can hit 100 APM is very high, and you can have a lot more people that are working at really high, let's say, efficiency, for example, in that they're doing all of their to-do list is fully ticked off. They're doing everything they need to do because the to-do list has been made much shorter. And I think there's a really fine line to walk between reducing the frustration out of the game and reducing the chores, which are like, no one really loves injecting. No one's like, oh, good, I get to do another round of injects. Like, it's just a thing you have to do. I would argue that it feels good when you do it well and you look at the graph and you're like, I only missed like 12 seconds of injects this game. That feels great. But at the same time, there's these little things that are kind of helping to keep the skill level of the game high while also keeping the frustration low. And what we're seeing, I think, from my perspective, in Stormgate and in Zero Space is that they're trying to reduce these
Yeah.
and trying to make them easier, simpler. I think Zero Space does more than Stormgate probably
Yes.
with that regard.
Yes. I've described in the past, if you read the manifesto, Zero Space as an interesting mix between a RTS and a MOBA. But I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think they're leaning into it with the
I
heroes
think
for
that's an
sure.
objectively better game, actually, unironically. There is a reason, well, objectively better doesn't exist. I'm capping, but you know what I mean. I think there is a reason why games such as LoL and like Dota or even
MOBAs.
Heroes of the Storm,
Yeah,
MOBAs. No, well, certain MOBAs were always were always popular, more popular, and I think there is a reason why even amongst in the genre, stuff like LOL was more popular than Dota. And
yeah,
I think that has a lot to do with what you described.
yeah,
The reason for that is because when you open a game of LOL, you're like, okay, I have a champion, I have to do this. It's quite clear what your objective to do. The skill learning, the skill curve,
curve. Yeah,
quite gradual. It's not that bad. But in RTS, I don't understand this. I will never understand this. RTS players always pride themselves in how difficult their game is. That's dumb. And I'm not saying that's dumb because I think I struggle with it. I am the top gamer. I'm a top player in like 50 different RTS. No, I'm kidding. In Age of Empires, in Starcraft, in Zero Space, in Stormgate, I'm always a top player. I do not think there's anything to be prideful of. I'm never like, wow, I made all of my chores so well. I think that RTS players have an unhealthy obsession with skill as a mechanical concept
Well, and an
compared to decision
objective
making.
where they're like, this is objectively like more skillful and more hard, and it's like
Yeah, because
we've
it's harder to mechanically execute.
but you and I have had hundreds of hours of conversations late into the night of like, what does MMR even measure? Like, is that even a measure of objective skill? Is there such thing as objective? Can we even go? Can we even say that that's like A is objectively harder than B? And it
But it's
goes
not
on the list.
only that. Like like for example, I can use your own example by defining how the skills that are really important for the game are completely invisible to players. And this, for example, the biggest difference between how the way a grandmaster understands the game and a game where and the way a diamond understands the game in StarCraft. So if you ask any diamond player, well, that's not true, but most diamonds player, okay, what's the most important skill in StarCraft? What do you think it is? What do you think they say, Hart?
Wait, am I asking what I think the most important skill is, or are you saying
Both,
what most
both,
people?
both. Like
Okay, my
different.
answer is a bit different and a bit difficult, maybe. I don't know what
Yeah,
most people say. They probably just say macro, whatever that means. I
yeah.
would say the most difficult part depends on how you play, because
No,
so
not the
much of
most
the
difficult,
time.
the most important.
Yeah, but okay, the most important, fine. The most important part depends how you play, because we've seen people who can get to decent levels by
At the top
minimizing the parts
level.
of the
At the
games.
top level, I should
Okay,
have
okay,
specified.
okay,
So what? Like, okay. Let's ask this in a slightly different way. Question:
okay.
What makes Serral Serral?
But I've already said this. Cyril is the GOAT because he does everything perfectly. And there is okay. I think your point is that there is no most important part. Because
No, there is a most important part.
okay,
I'm
here's
not
my
trying to trap
thinking.
you.
Here's my
I,
problem.
I
If
think one of Serral's skill is significantly better than the other, and I think you are falling into the diamond trap. So I'm very interested. No, I say go on. I'm making fun of you.
I don't, you're not, but I don't see I don't, I
All
don't
of the good
see.
players have this. There is not a single good player who doesn't have
Okay,
this.
go.
Decision making. Nothing else matters nearly as much. Even the baboons that in Grandmaster play Protoss and Charger or Tollin have significantly better decision making. This not as it's not the decision making you're thinking of. It's not scouting. It's decision making. What do I do in a given situation? That's the biggest difference in any RTS. That's the number one thing in any game. Or at least all of those that I play competitively, including LOL. A Diamond will always tell you, wow, Raynor is amazing. He has 800 APM. In macros well, he has 3 different control groups. And that's certainly part of what makes Raynor and Serral. Is control with the infestor, etc. But everyone misses the critical point that in your games, you do not have borrowed the infestor because you didn't choose to make them in the first place. That's the difference between you and Serral. That's the difference between me and Serral. Serral always knows what he's doing. He always has a plan. He knows what the correct play is. He makes the right decisions at the right moment. Because nobody's perfect, Art. Even Serral makes mistakes. You just don't see it. Serral's injects are not perfect. They are the closest thing to perfect, but they're not perfect. Serral creep is not even particularly good. Players like Scarlet have significantly better creep. Well, okay,
No,
not even particularly good amongst top player. Okay. He
sure.
doesn't do everything perfectly. You are wrong
So,
about that.
so what
He's
do
not
you
a
think is
god.
his thing that is better than all things? Is his
Serral
decision making?
Serral, I swear to God, I've said this multiple times. Sometimes I think that what the correct decision is in any given position is single-handedly decided by what Serral does. It's insane. The guy makes calls that are so hard to judge. He makes calls about scouting. He understands what the opponent does. Ask him himself. Like, I'm pretty sure that he will say something like that too. Like, there is, or like even Rain. Like, of course, is insane mechanically. Do not for a second think that I'm saying that Serral is a shit player. I think he's the best player who has ever lived. But the things that impresses me the most, the things that I'm like, wow, I don't understand how the fuck he does it, is how no matter what, he always seems to be in the enemy hazard. He's always doing something. He's like, okay, he knows what he's doing. So one of the most interesting part ever, I remember a series, Serral Classic. And Classic at the time was playing a somewhat innovative strategy, which was playing a 3-base Colossi push. Okay? These are particularly hard to scout. Well, somewhat hard to scout and very hard to hold. And Serral, every single game, against Hero actually, sorry, not against Classic, against Hero. Every single game, Hero would show insane mechanics, insane like blink stalkers. I've seen some fucking insane mechanics with a Colossi and a Prisma, and Serral would have Vipers at 7 minutes. Which is an insane call to make. You have to be so confident in being, okay, this is the call. If I have Vipers at this moment, well, it was 7 minutes Hive and 9 minutes Vipers.
Yeah.
That
But
I cannot
if you
express
don't
to you
do
how
that,
hard it is to make
and then
that.
you
that
make the
call.
wrong call and you show up and you just look dumb.
Yes.
And this happened at LAN, interestingly. It's AC versus Eva. Eva is playing Terran. He plays this like 4 Hellion, 2 Cyclone, 2 Hellion opener. AC sees the Cyclones, he's like, cool, I'll make roaches. Eva is not playing mech, he's just playing straight up bio. Goes across the map, AC's got like roaches, like against 2-2 bio, gets A moved, and it's like, oh, I guess, what are we looking at here? What happened? I'm like watching, I'm like, he thinks it's mech, 100%, because he had a Bane nest and then he put the roach warren down, and he just got like mind gamed himself. He was so convinced that he knew what was happening, he didn't know what was happening. And when someone makes the wrong call, they look like a total fool. But I think a lot of the time,
in fact,
you could watch that and just be like, oh, I guess he just thinks roaches are good, and you can miss that like level of kind of meta decision making that's happening.
There is a lot of decision making. I'm not even. I wouldn't claim that I understand Serral decisions because I'm not Serral. I don't have the arrogance of saying I understand always why Serral does certain things. Like certain calls that Serral makes, I'm like, what? Why the fuck will you do that? And then it works perfectly. I'm like, oh, I guess that's why he will do that. How the fuck did he see this? It's like fucking Doctor Strange. He sees 20,000 multiverse and he chooses the only one in which he wins unwinnable positions. His decision making is so good, and that's, in my opinion, any Grandmaster player in StarCraft has excellent decision makings. Even the one that you think, like, think about the most boosted ones. The one that you think, yeah, me or for example, Bumps. Yeah,
I'm only going to
Bumps,
say people I
etc.
like instead of PMing.
Yeah. People say, for example, Mectern, Skytos, those things, or Linners, Cheesers, all of those are commonly
Yeah, this is what I was
attributed
about to
to
say. Yeah.
the terms of unskilled.
I think that someone who's really obvious has crazy decision making is Reaper, because he plays these most ridiculous builds. They're awful. He gets into the most weird spot, and then he puts a Spire down, and you're like, "There's no way that works. There's no way that's the right call." And then you look across. Oh, Special is playing BCs, and it's like,
yeah.
How did you just?
But also Eric.
But it's these players that get into weird spots a lot of the time, and then they realize
Eric
where
or
they
Bonan.
are.
Like, have you ever actually listened to what Bonan says while he explains the games? It's fucking insane.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, it's like, oh yeah, I've calculated all of the possible calls at my opponent because I've been in this position 200,000 times. And like, no matter, like, the game Bonan's games are so weird. Proxy hatches, because Bonan is the best cannon rushers in the world, for people who don't know.
Yeah. Right
yeah. Hands down. Rocker is gonna write at me again saying he's not. I'm the best cannon rusher in the world. But Bonan gets into this.
Parting might.
I mean, parting is like more like of an incredible, or like Mana. You could argue that Mana is better, but it's not better at cannon rushing. He's just a better player overall.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of an
It's because people see his name in the loading screen and they go, okay, I send my drone out first thing, and there'll be a hatch on his side of the map. But because he's played this 50 times and you've played it twice, there's no way you know it better than he does. There's no way, in a game against Eric, where it's one base corrupt. He's played it 25 times. This is the first time you're seeing it. There's no way that you're like you know, those mental steps ahead that he is. I think the point you're making is that Cyril is this way with in any given situation and at any spot, it's the right call.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Even in spots that both
ridiculous.
players have been in 10,000 times.
Yes, it's ridiculous how consistent he is at making good choices. But even but I'm not just talking about tech choices. It's everything. Like, do I attack? Do I all back? Can I go late game from this position? How do I approach late game? Do I want to go into Larkas? Do I want to go into this? Now, it's not like he's never made mistakes in his career. I still remember the Ragnarok games.
I was thinking about that one the whole time we've been having this conversation.
Yeah, there are like
the thing that annoyed me about that is so many people saw it, and it really annoyed me. And they were like, "Oh, he's an idiot. He's he's so dumb. This was so obvious."
I would have done the same, by the way. I would have also quit the game.
I think it's possible that he I obviously I don't know, but he, and this is the thing that the person who's in Diamond who was watching it would never know and wouldn't do. He sent a link all the way around the map and it ran into the third and he saw the drone count. But what he didn't know is that Ragnarok had just transferred a bunch of drones from the natural, which was mining out there. So there's a scout that he's choosing to do that you never would.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
He's seeing that and he's calculating, going, "Oh, I'm dead," and he's tricked himself by misinformation at that point. Or I guess disinformation.
But people thought that he left the game. People thought that he left the game because he thought he was dead by the roach attack. But he wasn't. He was holding it.
Yeah.
The real problem was that he scouted and he was like, okay, I think in this position, if we go into a macro dead, I'm dead anyway. I'm dead in like 2 minutes.
Because he knows, he sends the drone, he sends the link around the map, he sees the drone count, and now he's working out, and in his head he's going, "Oh, I'm on 32, he's on 44, I'm way further behind than I thought, and I'm dead."
And to explain how hard that call is, I discussed this at the time with two close to 6K or above 6K Zerg players, who were Iba and Fiant. We were discussing it, and we couldn't come to a conclusion. We only reached the conclusion that Sarah should have stayed after Iba and Fiant played that position like 5 or 6 times. To almost 6K or above 6K players had to play that position several times while knowing everything, drone counts, etc.
Yeah. And then resuming from replay and playing
before coming to a conclusion. That's how hard that call was to make. People like completely misunderstood why I made that call, what went into his brain, etc. Now, of course, in retrospective, we are all good and saying, "Oh yeah,
I wouldn't have left that game. I would have won.
I wouldn't have left." I saw some comments on Reddit being like, "Wow, Sarah was so disrespectful. I would have played to the last minute until I was 100% sure, even if you have 1% to blah, blah, blah." That's not how it works.
And it can't be how it works either, because it needs to be that you're very, very, very sure and confident in your calls and that you're making the right calls.
Yes.
And if you start to think, maybe I'm not dead, and you start to huff the copium, that's when it gets really scary, right? Because you're no longer just like playing your game and you're starting to like doubt yourself and second guess yourself. And I think, some level of that is healthy, but so much of it is really important, especially, in StarCraft, the R is often more important. The RT, I guess, is often more important than the S. The game is so many actions, and it's so like in the moment, and he needs to see things and react to them so quickly. And I think a lot of people are I don't know. Everyone really annoyed me, and I downloaded the replay and I watched it at half speed from Cyril's POV to see exactly what was going on. And to this day, you can see him run the ling in, you can see him realize like, "Oh, I'm dead." I think he should have played it out, because there's so many players.
Just for context, this is 2020.
Well, it's Katowice.
Yeah, so February 2023, Katowice, round of 8, Serral versus Ragnarok. Game 5.
I think it's the round of 8 or the round of 4.
Yeah, round of 8. Round of 8.
Yeah. And it was upset because it knocked Cyril out. And I think if it's your tournament life on the line, it's like, okay, I might play that till I have 1 drone left. I might Terran GG timing on that one. But yeah, I think so many people saw that and thought that like, "Oh, I know exactly what's happening here. I'm so smart." And it's like, you really don't. I think Cyril now will admit that it was a bad call.
It was a bad call, but the problem is everyone
you have
makes
to operate with the information. Yeah, and it's the rate that you make them at, right? Is he? Let's say he makes them at 99.9% are correct calls.
Yeah. This is exactly like chess. In chess, the player who wins, even at the top level, is not the player that plays necessarily better. Is the player that makes less mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. Like now you can say, well, playing better means making less mistakes, but it's not necessarily that. You can do a very bad mistake, so make quote unquote less mistakes and still win the game if you are good enough. By just recuperating. Like if your opponent makes 1,000 small mistakes and you make one bad mistake, very often you win. Even though, for example, it looks on paper that your mistake was more serious than all of theirs.
Can you imagine? Or no, can you imagine? I remember playing games and I'm playing and my opponent has done like 8 little things wrong and I'm like, oh, this guy sucks so bad. And then I lose anyway and I'm like, oh. It's like we were talking about at the start. Zane misplacing his hatch and you're like, this guy just put his hatch in like the wrong position. It's fully just like 2 tiles wrong, like 2 rows wrong. And then you win the game anyway. It's it can be really frustrating, but
it can be very frustrating because you tend to overfixate on that thing that you very often overvalue. This is like what I always say. Like people were like, "Oh my god!" Well, it's very important to fix your opening, to be clear. But very often people have a very wrong understanding how certain things works. Like they're always like, "Oh yes, Starcraft is all
and the
about
importance that they
injecting as a
place in those
Zerg."
things.
Yes. This is the most problem. This is the most important thing that I say every time I coach anyone below GM or below 5K especially like master players, diamond players. Every time I coach them, I always find this thing, this consistent thing where I'm like, you are overthinking. You are focusing on this or that. Oh, I lost this game because of this. I lost this game because of this. But I can guarantee you that any Grandmaster player or any pro player in the same position that you think is unwinnable because you fucked up too much would win easily. Now, that doesn't mean that those are not bad mistakes, that you shouldn't fix them, especially stuff like supply block or build order. But what I mean is that consistency over the course of a game pays much more than inconsistent high and inconsistent low. If you start the game by having great micro and at 5 minutes you're floating 1,000 minerals, you're going to lose that game. They don't cancel each other out. That's not how it works. Someone who does everything somewhat decently, calmly, is often better than someone who's very inconsistent. Like, oh, sometimes I macro super well and I make the perfect split, and sometimes I just lose everything to banning
sometimes
some.
I'm on move command and everything explodes.
So
I think you're right. It's and especially when you think about the context of not just this game that you're in right now, but over a longer period. It's like you might play like a GM in this game, and then you play like a diamond in the next game. Guess where you're going to get stuck? Diamond,
not in GM.
You're not going to get stuck in GM. You're going to get stuck in diamond. If you play more consistently at a higher level, you'll climb, and if you play more consistently at a low level, you'll fall. But
in fact, you have to. Another interesting part that most people don't seem to understand is that to reach a certain rank, you have to play better than that rank.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to reach low GM, I need to play better than the players who are already low GM. So otherwise, mathematically, I will not get there.
Yeah. But I don't know. People always get stuck on the same. It's like, you just overtook the person who's in second. What place are you in the race now?
Yeah.
Never says first. No, you're second.
Yeah, that's how you need to because of the way Grandmaster works, or Master or any MMR system works, because of the bottleneck, etc. The way you overtake someone, the way you reach certain goals, is by playing better than them. Like that's consistent is the only way of doing that over time. There is a reason, and this I've talked about this. I always breaks everyone's heart with this because people are like, no, maybe I always been bad at Starcraft, but maybe if I put myself into Stormgate, I can be a top player. I'm sorry, I really am, but you're not gonna be a top player because these players are consistent, like the skill transfers. Now, it doesn't transfer as much as someone like Forcer things, where if you are like, oh, if you like, the only thing that matters in the Stormgate ladder is your Starcraft rank. So if you are 6K, you're gonna be better than the guy that's 5-5.
Yeah.
That's not that brutal. But there is a correlation between the two things.
Yeah.
People that are consistently good at RTS are gonna be good at every new RTS. There is a reason why it took me less than 100 games to get Conqueror and Age of Empires 4. There is a reason why I can play any new account and get Grandmaster. There is a reason why I became a top Zero Space or Stormgate players, because I consistently have the same decision-making skills, and that transfers really well. I understand how this kind of games works. Right? So that's kind of that's kind of the thing that I was saying. Like, when people tend to think about how to improve in video games in very weird ways. For another thing that I
Yeah, for
wanted to
sure.
say actually is how important it is to actually enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah,
Now
I think
you're gonna
that by
say,
far is the main thing, I think.
yeah, you are gonna look at me and say, look, Lorembo, you always scream and things. It's clear that you don't enjoy it. It is possible to become good at something that you don't enjoy. I've become good at Zero Space, and God knows I did not enjoy that experience. But that's it takes a certain kind of masochistic and addictive personality to do that, and it's definitely not the norm.
You've already said that was a big dose of sunken cost as well.
Yes, sunken cost fallacy, and like it affected my mental health really poorly. I've talked about this maybe when we will do the Zero Space episode. I will go more in depth. Like, you have to enjoy what you're doing. You have not to focus so much on improving. People that improve are not thinking about improving. I know it's frustrating, it's unjust, but that's how it works. It's like every time you ask a child prodigy like Iba or Fianda, how did you improve so fast? And they just always reply the same thing. I don't know, I just like the game and I play it a lot. Because there is no trick, there is no secret. These people don't have they don't have 250 IQ. Well, in the case of Iba, I would be surprised.
Listen, this is not even a trying to be mean. It's just the lead exposure alone at this point means that that is gonna be a stretch.
Lead exposure is really terrible, guys. Make sure to check you don't have lead pipes in your house, because that's not great. No, jokes aside. Yeah, like, it's just that.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah,
Okay.
this has been a really fun episode. We've just been kind of rambling about
Yeah, I think it
about
was
everything,
fine.
but this was good. So the next episode, I think we're gonna kind of wrap up Stormgate as by the time we record that one, the kind of alpha will be coming to a close, or beta now.
Yeah.
I always say alpha.
We're probably gonna give us the final thoughts. There's gonna be the last State of the Gate episode for a while, not ever. We are not going anywhere.
Yeah,
So
I
I
don't know
hope
when
that you guys
Stormgate
can
reopens
continue.
after that. Actually, not sure.
I don't think that. I think they've said this summer, no?
Is it not until summer now? Really?
I have no clue.
I guess
I
we're only a
genuinely don't
couple
know.
months away. Maybe we'll see. But yeah, and then I think we're gonna do a couple of Zero Space episodes, which will be interesting.
Yeah, we're gonna do Zero Space because Zero Space is coming up. I'm gonna do some Age of Empires, maybe.
No, we're not doing Age of Empires content. No.
Shut the fuck up. Starcraft
No.
2 because Zane asked for more Starcraft 2 episodes.
Did he?
Yes.
Okay.
He said, I like the podcast, but I would like more StarCraft 2 episodes.
Okay.
I don't know how well
He
those...
told me
those
he didn't know the name of the podcast, so we're getting mixed messages.
Oof. Zane being a lying weasel.
Snake. Called
Snake.
out.
Anyway, I think we close it out here.
Yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Do stay
Like and subscribe! Smash that like button!
Because we are gonna get some more Stormgate content going, and then Zero Space content, maybe Age of Empires content when both betas are down, I guess.
Grey Goo content.
Very good content. Are we actually gonna do a Grey Goo episode?
Maybe one day. I thought about like the 1st of April. You know?
We can't do it now you said that.
Yeah.
Okay.